Hi, it's Larry Levin, and we're here for another Cop Talk with my esteemed colleague, Bob Cohn.
Nice to be here again.
And it couldn't be a busier day in the world of Jewry and Israel. Well, it seemed like this day would never happen, but we're within a week of when the Palestinian contingent might ask for a unilateral statehood declaration, unless they are talked out of it somehow. This is an issue on which you and I have had a bit of a role reversal, where I think it's an absolutely horrid idea, and you've said you think it could at least potentially have some potential benefit and positive benefit in pushing the parties toward negotiation. So why don't you talk about that?
That is exactly right. We really are on the same page, but on different sides of the same page. The best way to achieve an independent Palestinian state, which I have supported since 1974, is through the negotiated process. It appears that nothing can stop at this point Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, from going to the UN. It appears that at the General Assembly they have more than a majority to at least recognize the Palestinian Authority as an independent state.
Correct.
So my feeling is if it's going to happen anyway, what's going to happen on the day after the declaration? Even though they won't be members of the UN, they'll be a non-member independent state like the Vatican City is. And there's a very good article in today's JTA by a guy named Michael Weil, Federation Director down in New Orleans, who says, okay, if it's going to happen anyway, what happens next? And then the Palestinians' new state should be recognized by Israel with the expectation that they will release Gilad Shalit, the Israeli prisoner, that they should curtail terrorism, and they would have to be a responsible member of the family of nations.
And there's been so much talk about how this is going to bring world sentiment even more against Israel, but it's also going to bring an implicit expectation of responsibility to the Palestinians.
That's exactly
to act more like a state, and
exactly.
That's the point you're making.
100% my point.
All right, let's switch back to the United States, because President Obama has taken big heat from the Republican side of the aisle. But Obama, on the other hand, was extremely helpful recently in helping Israel rescue its diplomats from the embassy in Cairo. And the U.S. is clearly poised to veto any unilateral declaration in the Security Council before an end around to the General Assembly occurs. The jab at Obama seems to be that to be Israel's friend, you have to support whatever the prime minister wants, whenever he wants it. The voices in Israel, on the other hand, are all over the board about Bibi, some calling emphatically for his resignation. So why should Americans have to have one viewpoint on Israel in order to talk about it?
Well, they really need not, and they certainly do not, and your next Can We Talk is going to be devoted to that very topic.
Right.
On the other hand, the election of a Republican Catholic in the district formerly held by Anthony Weiner, who had to resign in disgrace, was a pretty big setback, and former New York Mayor Ed Koch, a Jew and a Democrat, endorsed Bob Turner, the Republican candidate, who scored a pretty surprising victory in a district that's been Democrat since 1923.
Although Ed Koch, even though a Democrat, is about as hardcore right on Israel as you would find, and a huge constituency in this district is Orthodox, who found the position of the Democratic challenger on same-sex marriage to be anathema.
Yeah, and that needs to be factored in. But clearly there was the most dramatic example of a congressional district in which the support for Israel was at least appropriately seen as one big factor that caused an upset.
And let's go back to the Can We Talk, which is this Tuesday at the JCC. Hope you all think about coming. As our articles in the paper show, it's really hard for folks on different parts of the spectrum within the Jewish community, let alone outside, between the Jewish community and the outside community, to speak civilly and constructively to each other. Why is this so?
Well, I think it's sort of symptomatic of the general polarization in our body politic, where if you're at a family dinner nowadays and say, please pass the rolls, they'll say, well, what do you think you deserve those rolls, and you're nothing but a right-wing supporter of George W. Bush or a left-wing lunatic supporting Obama. It's just a general lack of civil discourse in our society, and I'm glad you were having this program. I spoke at Nusachari B'nai Zion on Shabbat morning this past weekend, and I recently was at CRC, where a lot of my family members belong, and I felt equally comfortable among both groups talking about Israel. There are areas of disagreement, but as long as we address our colleagues on the other end of the spectrum with respect, and I think the Israelis do a better job. They've evolved into being a Haaretz guy can talk to a Yediat Achronot right-winger, without killing each other.
Well, it's clear that Jews talk at the dinner table, and if and they talk about things, everything under the sun, and if you're talking to somebody outside the Jewish community, it's kind of easier to say, okay, we disagree. This is very painful to talk about. Let's choose not to talk about it. But oftentimes within the Jewish community, we don't have that luxury because we're going to be bombarded with opinions and discussions. So it's very hard to agree not to talk, don't you think?
It is hard, and at the same time, it's important that we go beyond just the rhetoric and go beyond kind of the knee-jerk response on the left or the right and really figure what are the facts. Alan Dershowitz had a thoughtful op-ed in the Wall Street Journal where he traces the whole two-state solution concept all the way back to 1937 with the Peel Commission. It's important we can disagree on how to process those facts, but a lot of members of our own community, and this is where the Jewish light comes in, need to be reminded, even if we said something a couple of weeks ago, it's important to reiterate certain things that they get imprinted. So when we have a discussion, we're basing it on fact and not just emotion.
We'll see you next time on Cup Talk.